Most coaches think that confidence is something that you talk about, you hype it up, you encourage it, you tell players to be aggressive and to play free. But here is the uncomfortable truth of the matter: confidence isn't built by what we say as coaches, it is built by what our practices feel like, because every practice is teaching something. I love practice. I love practices more than games, to be completely honest with you. But every practice teaches something, whether we mean it to or not. And a lot of practices, by complete accident, are training our players to be careful, to be hesitant, and to play not to mess up. Not because the players are soft, not because they don't care, but because they've learned that mistakes come with a cost, personally, physically, socially, emotionally. So today I want to break down why most practices accidentally train fear instead of confidence, and what you can do to flip that without lowering your standards or without losing any sort of control. So, I'd like to start here. If players are scared to make a mistake in practice, they're going to freeze in games every time. And if you find that to be your team, whether you have a youth team, a middle school team, a high school team, even at the college level a little bit, this isn't a you problem. It is a coaching problem that we have all had. Every coach watching has had a team that looked sharp all week. You think, man, we're really executing in practice. And then you get tight when the game starts to speed up, when the lights get a little bit brighter. That doesn't mean that your players lack confidence. It usually means that they have actually learned to protect themselves in practice. Okay. Here's the invisible problem that I think occurs more often than not: fear doesn't look like fear in basketball. It's not necessarily labeled in a similar way to what we might view as fear. We might have some very what looks like confident players, but they might be fearful in the inside. We can't necessarily get inside the brain of all of our players and know exactly how they think and feel. Fear looks like passing up an open drive. Fear looks like swinging the ball instead of attacking a closeout really hard. Fear looks like players staring at the bench instead of reading the floor. And what we usually call a lack of confidence is truly just hesitation. Hesitation is a player's way of thinking, what's the safest option here? And if we're not creating a safe environment for our players to improve through making mistakes constantly, they're going to constantly be thinking to themselves, what's the safest option here? And the scary part is we usually train that hesitation without even realizing it. Fear is not something that we don't mean to train it. We're trying to teach, we're trying to clean things up, we're trying to help our players become the best version of themselves. Like, why aren't they listening to the things that I have to say? And I've had to tell myself this time and time again is, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. We know that true adage. But think about what practice actually feels like for players. For a lot of us, every bad rep gets stopped. Every missed read has to get corrected. Every mistake gets called out, usually in front of everybody. And while there's certainly a time and a place for that, we need to make sure that the practices that we are running are actually efficient, effective, and corrective in such a way that can build the confidence of our players. So over time, when we, have constant whistle stops, you know exactly the type of coaching that I'm talking about, where you go down the court once, tweet, blow the whistle, and play stops. You got to give a correction. All right, let's go the other way. Tweet, blow the whistle, get a correction, play stops. Players don't like that. They hate that. They hate those types of coaches and hate those types of practices. So over time, players stop associating mistakes with learning, and they start associating mistakes with consequences, specifically at younger levels. And once that happens, the goal of our practices quietly shifts. It's no longer, how do I make the right play, the correct play? It starts to become, how do I avoid being wrong? And avoidance is the enemy of decision making. Players aren't afraid of mistakes, they're afraid of what happens after mistakes. So I think we have to reframe it in a few ways. And this reframe changed everything for me. Confidence isn't hype, it isn't yelling, be aggressive, it isn't telling a kid that you believe in them necessarily. Even if you do, they might not become confident because of the things that we tell them. Confidence for our players comes from permission to try, permission to fail, permission to be early instead of perfect, permission to know that they could fail without being embarrassed in front of their team. But, and this is important, that doesn't mean chaos. That doesn't mean that we give our players unlimited freedoms and we don't correct them when they make mistakes. It's the guardrails, clear principles, simple triggers, a small menu of options. Because when everything is allowed, players freeze. I like to think of it, and I tell my players this all the time: complexity will freeze you, simplicity will free you. Play a simple game. When the rules are clear and the response to mistakes is safe and the environment you create is safe, they are going to inherently play faster. We see this in the classroom at schools too, if you've ever gone through any sort of education, teacher training of sorts. So, the question that we have to answer then: what actually needs to be corrected? And what just maybe needs more reps for them to start to understand? I think we need to correct a few things. Correct effort. We say I don't coach effort. You need to coach effort. You need to consistently correct effort. You need to correct spacing because it's the most important thing on offense. You need to correct, a violation of our principles and the things that we do, the things that make us us. But if a player makes the wrong read, they execute wrong, let it go. It's the right idea. They're trying to make a play, but it's the wrong read. Let it go. Because a late pass from indecision, I think, is worse than an early pass that might have been a little off. You can fix execution. That's where this whole thing stems from. You can fix execution. You cannot fix fear. It's really tough once a player is playing afraid in your system to not play with fear. But you can absolutely fix execution. So our job then is to design practices that build the half-second decision speed that our players have to have in order to be successful. So instead of scripting everything, start creating situations, create an environment. This is where I really have fallen in love with the constraint-led approach. Start reps with an advantage-based start, specifically at lower levels. I think that's humongous. Maybe add a defender here, add a defender there. Take away a dribble, change the spacing, create an environment that uses constraints instead of commands. And when something breaks down, ask questions to the players instead of giving them answers. Hey, what did you see? What did you see there? Why was that the decision? What did you think? Where was help coming from? What what do we think we need to do next time to solve this coverage solution? Because basketball IQ isn't knowing the play, it's recognizing the picture in real time at full speed. And I love to frame it with this perceive, decide, execute framework. A lot of us live in the execution framework of it, not the perception framework of it. The more that we can help our players perceive and see better, the better they decide, the better they execute. So at the end of the day, the big takeaway: you don't build confident players by eliminating mistakes. You build confident players by designing reps where mistakes are information, not punishment. And if you're a coach who wants help with that, that's really how we grow as coaches at the end of the day, is by creating an environment where our players can understand by asking questions so that they can see the game better.